So a couple of weeks ago, Batman got released into the world, and I managed to get the opportunity to go and see it on the theaters. I sat there for 3 hours, and I have to say, it is definitely an interesting film. Before I went into watching this film, I had a certain expectations, considering this was a standalone project that had no relations to any of the DC films. I expected that this film would be matching in terms of quality as the Dark Knight trilogy by Christopher Nolan, and at the same time, like many other people, I had some form of questions on whether Robert Pattinson is a perfect fit for this role, considering he was a vampire man couple of years ago. I went into this film with some of those questions, but other than that, I had no insights on what the film is all about, which kind of an era this film takes place at, which after watching this film, I feel like that kind of detail is a little bit more important to understand the character. So without further ado, let's start this review. Now, Batman to me is probably my most favorite superhero, whether it be DC or Marvel. Just in general, Batman is my favorite because there's a lot of value that goes behind his character, and not that any other superhero doesn't have any value at all, but it's just that in terms of film wise, they really show Batman's character really well, and it's very addictive to look at his character and the kind of roles and responsibility he plays, but at the same time the kind of thoughts that he goes through as a superhero. Now in this film, it's definitely way different from what we have seen from other Batman films before. Definitely not talking about Ben Affleck's Batman, because that can just leave the room for a while. Never gonna include that in this film. I should say, as for the characters, every single one of them is amazingly well done. I had no issues with Robert Pattinson being the Batman. In his own unique way, Robert Pattinson adds his own style to the Batman role. Even though the Penguin was not the most prominent character in the overall film, but he has his own value, he has his own place in the film. We also had Selina Kyle. I should say, thought this would be more of a side character that they wouldn't really pay much attention to. They wouldn't really elevate the character's presence, but they did a phenomenal job. There's a lot more depth, there's a lot more character development with her as well. And then you have the main villain, Riddler. I should say they nailed a villain that is not the Joker very well. He's just an amazing villain in this entire film. You want to keep introducing new villains to the scene and give them a lot of life into this overall film, and they did a phenomenal job with that. And then you have Falcone, which also plays an integral role in this film, and it's very astonishing because they have so much villains going on, they have so much bad guys going on, but they still differentiate the levels of how important are they in the story. Like, you can tell which is the big bad boy, and then you have the miniatures. So that is for the characters. Now for the entire story itself, it's 3 hours long, so it's a big challenge to make an audience like myself to sit and watch for 3 hours long. Did I enjoy the overall story? Yes. Is there parts that I feel like that it could be cut out and not been included in the entire film? Yes, I feel like there are some parts a little bit draggy, and the pace of the overall film could be reduced if it wasn't for that part. There are some reviews that people say they sit through and they didn't even realize it was a 3 hours film because it was that fast. I didn't really get that. The overall plot of this entire film is definitely interesting and probably from a different aspect than the previous other Batman films. The previous Batman films, for example, the Dark Knight trilogy, I keep bringing that up because it's a very good Batman film, so I have to bring it up. The Dark Knight trilogy was definitely a power-packed superhero film from the DC side. Batman was really shown well. They had all these action sequences going. The story was in-depth, so it was just amazing to watch, and it was entertaining. It followed the standard superhero procedure of, like, having a villain, having a love interest, having some sort of story going on forward, but obviously it took to another level by adding more depth to each of their characters and adding a lot of connections and storyline for each of them. This Batman film, however, feels much more different from that aspect, in such it doesn't have this standard superhero formula going on, but more of a subtle, laid back, slow paced Batman film. You don't get immediate actions out of nowhere. You don't get actions that you kind of expect they're coming. And I think that is perfectly suited for this film because of how the villains. You have the Riddler who keeps dropping hints and clues, and you have Batman and the police trying to solve the clues given, and they try to bring this situation to an end. And the overall story feels very suited to that. You can't really expect what is going to happen next. You can't really say for sure what is going to be the next move from the Riddler and what would be Batman's actions to that. You really feel like the Riddler is sort of controlling the story from start to finish. Although it doesn't have like expected action sequences, the film still has great action sequences in my opinion. There was this one scene where, the Batman and the Penguin have this car chase going on. Penguin's car flips over and Batman, in a slow-mo fashion, Batman is just walking to the flipped car. And it was all cool. And then there was this one scene where Batman comes to the car and he just kneels down and just stares at Penguin's face. A little bit nitpicky, I'm not gonna lie, I might be nitpicking here. I was like, why add that? They could have just ended as Batman walking into the car. Like, then again, that's nitpicking, and that was probably one of the parts where it's a little bit weird. In a lot of instances, you see Batman in a disadvantage. He's not always this brute man that can punch everything and get his way through and has a lot of advantages in terms of strength over these people. You see Batman still having some disadvantage. Maybe his gadget supply is low. You still have some of his martial arts being outdone by some of these guys. You still see him in tricky situations that he has to come out of. So that is very interesting to see because it puts the superhero at a disadvantage and gives a lot of value because now you would expect that superhero to sort of overcome that problem. Now, I don't know if I'm right about this statement or not, but this story sets in a time where Bruce Wayne is still new to the whole Batman thing and he's still trying to adjust and work with the police and work with the public and all. I don't know if that's a right statement or not, but you can let me know down in the comments below. The most unique fact in any Batman film is the opinions that not just Batman has but other characters in the film has, and also the public's opinion is something that is also voiced out a lot. This film is no different to that. You have a lot of perspectives that the public shares, politicians shares, and as well as the villains. For example, the Riddler has an opinion on Bruce Wayne being an orphan. He has an opinion that, yeah, you are an orphan, but you can't complain too much when you have so much wealth going on for you. You have your own company, you have your own mansion, you have so much wealth that can support you for a lifelong. While at the same city, at the same time, you have orphans that are very poor and don't have supplies. They are subjected to a lot of torture and a lot of violent things. This whole section, this whole opinion, Riddler says it to Batman himself, to Bruce Wayne himself. Bruce Wayne obviously hearing that stuff, you're not gonna feel really well. It's always interesting to see a lot of perspectives from not just the hero but from the villain itself, which in a lot of superhero films they pretty much don't care because they want to keep the movie rolling. Also have Catwoman on the other side, who plays an integral role as well. I feel like there's a lot more depth into her character than, let's say, the Dark Knight trilogy Catwoman. She has a lot of story going for her as well, and her story is also explained a lot. She has her own opinions and perspectives as well to the overall situation, and sometimes you see some conflict going on between Batman and Catwoman as well. The overall film always keeps you on your toes and gives you moments where you breathe with the characters, you see each and every characters from a different lens and perspectives, but at the same time keeps the story moving forward with all the mysteries and riddles that Batman has to solve, and of course gives you the action sequence that you would expect from a superhero film. As an overall film and how I enjoyed it in the theaters, how my experience was, I am definitely gonna rate this film an 8 out of 10. I feel like they should stop it as it is because it's a nice full packed film, but they teased something in the film, so I think there's gonna be a sequel, so I don't know. But either way, that's my review. Hopefully you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So bye bye.